Need for Speed.
Yeah, it's a great game.
You know, I missed that show, actually. Right, there has been some significant changes and some big shifts, in my opinion, of the industry that kind of all link to Need for Speed. We're going to be talking about the success of Battlefield, and it's genuinely mind-boggling how crazy the jump is from the previous game to this game. And of course, we're going to be talking about F1 2026 basically not existing in its normal format. They're going to basically release a DLC. Again, we'll talk about that because a lot of this all points to EA's new strategy, EA's new plan, and EA testing the waters, like with Skate, and releasing a game with no content and then being like, oh, look, it's not done very... Anyway, I think it's time for a natter about all of these topics because they all relate to what we could see in the future of Need for Speed. Of course, in case you didn't know, Criterion is stuck working on Battlefield. That's why we haven't had any developments, anything with Need for Speed for a significant amount of time. But let's start off with the Codemasters reskin pack coming out. So instead of 2026 being a new F1 game, they're going to basically reskin all of the teams and the characters and whatnot as is for the next year of F1, and probably new tracks or modifying the tracks to be up to date with the, you know, I don't know, sports games. I don't really give a damn, but they're doing a DLC pack, and this is a method I've always considered. Why don't sport games do this in general? Most sports games are just rehashed every year. Most people that play sports games will admit they're just rehashed every year, in where they change the skins, they change, or we've tweaked the physics so it's a little bit... There are some differences, but they take the same game, they slap a skin on it, they do a little... new game, and that is great because it means that the people that play those games, they get a new game every year, they get excited about the game. That's amazing. I'm jealous of you. Right now, we don't have a new game even in development that we know of. Okay, no, I don't think there is. Now, this is actually after the fallout of, I say the fallout as if it was a bad thing, the major success of Battlefield. And that means to me that EA's actually seen straight away, and they're reacting much quicker than they previously have, that maybe giving people more time and more resources to actually create something bigger and better, you'll have better returns. Who would have thought releasing a game every year, this day and age, may be quite strenuous on the teams? I've always seen this model, like, why is this not a thing for all sports games anyway? Like, most games don't have any significant changes. They're basically doing that anyway, but I guess they're selling their packaged product and then there's a hype, and I know why. Anyway, the reason they're doing this, obviously, is to give them more time to work on a bigger and better game in the future, so 2027, and of course then use that engine to probably keep going back to a full release schedule. That is probably the plan. Unless this worked tremendously well, then maybe this is the new method for F1, is to like do significant changes every other year. That's a much longer development cycle than they've previously had the ability to use. Anyway, so this could mean crazy upgrades to the engine. They could fully replace the engine. There've always been rumors that they could switch to Unreal for F1. There'd been rumors that they could have switched to Frostbite. And of course, they could just be doing a massive overhaul of the engine that currently exists, and they don't want to break stuff and they need time. To be clear, I think it's the latter one, but actually switching to another unified engine, and that being Frostbite, which is doing really well with Battlefield, is actually not something I'm against. If you have everyone on the same engine within the company, well, sharing assets and sharing features between the games instantly becomes so much better. This is a model they tried to follow before. It didn't go well, but maybe this time. Maybe this time. Anyway, that is the F1 news. That's pretty much all you need to know. In my opinion, this is a good thing. Moving on to Battlefield, because this is a little bit more significant and really points to something insane that I never really thought to process before. Battlefield 6 has done insanely well. Like, game industry breaking insanely well. There's a quote: "The title generated the highest single month US physical and digital full game tracked dollar sales total in 3 years." Man, that just sounds like a whole load of waffle, but essentially it is done tremendously well. Let me give you some numbers. October sales volume alone. We're talking sales. We are not talking about no Game Pass or no EA Playness. I'm sure, you know, there's some discounts in there, but we are talking sales of the game. Battlefield 6 surpassed the lifetime total sales of Battlefield 1, which had 21 million copies sold. That is absolutely mind-boggling, meaning that Battlefield 6 is sitting over 22 million copies, maybe 30 million copies in the short period of time that it has been out. Those other games had a long time to kind of fester and linger, but clearly the exodus, the dislike for Call of Duty has clearly just boiled over to the point now people are going to Battlefield. And I think overall, I did not purchase Battlefield. I stuck with my word. I did play the free-to-play one. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But I really think this shows a massive, a massive push for something people really want, and that is a honed-in, solid, but proper, gritty, realistic experience. Something that is not really hugely available these days. And I get why. I mean, Call of Duty stagnated, and as did Battlefield, obviously. So clearly, the sales approach has paid off. More human power, a more focused team, or more focused teams, longer 3-4 year development cycle. The game has sold more than multiple Battlefield games combined throughout its whole franchise, and even some of its most successful ones. And that is, this information is not new, so it's been like a week since the... Mate, think of all those Christmas sales that Battlefield is gonna get. That's why they released before Christmas. The Christmas sales are just gonna pile up and up and up. But let's talk about the campaign, which is of course built by Criterion. And of course then there's the RedSec mode, which also, both of these modes, basically not seen as doing very well. And EA is quick to react, but this time maybe things will be a little bit different considering their new kind of mindset, the new approach that clearly they're giving these people more time worked pretty well. Now, Criterion worked on the campaign. Your initial thought may be, oh god, Criterion's going in the can. However, to give them the fairness there, although they have failed their last 2 stories, it is not their fault in this situation because they were handed the tools for Battlefield pretty late on, if you will. There was a dedicated story studio that basically closed. EA ripped them apart, and then Criterion became the lead helm at the story, and basically it sounded like there really wasn't much there and they had to smash something together very quickly. And so overall, I mean, how would you compare it to the Battlefield campaign? I didn't play either of them, so I quite frankly don't know. And then RedSec is like their battle royale extraction. I don't know. I don't play enough. I just died on a crane. But that was a mode created by Motive, which is also working on another game, because probably their studio is a little bit bigger than Criterion. But ultimately, that also didn't do very well. What did well, and what's the most successful part of the Battlefield experience, is clearly the multiplayer aspect of it. Now, I do want to say that the single player being there was clearly a sales pull for a lot of people because people do miss that, and Call of Duty dropped it and then brought it back because they even realized it was probably a stupid idea. But clearly the focus is that the multiplayer finally is very good. And it's also like such a simple idea in my head, like it's just a military shooter. No, you don't even do the character models. There's no like animations on your, but you just do your arms. So why, I don't know why it, sorry, I'm not, I'll stop. So with the success of Battlefield, you kind of maybe think about monetization. Well, monetization in this game, again, from what I know, is a little bit different in that they're not selling kind of like season passes. At least that's not the idea. The guns are coming for free. The maps are coming for free. And what is being paid is cosmetics. And, you know, that's not something I really dislike. There were some pretty cool skins I saw floating around that they decided against because they were like, well, these are not realistic. I don't play the game. So who am I to say? I bought the Nicki Minaj skin on Call of Duty, the Black Ops 4, 3. I don't bloody know which one it was. One of the Call of Duty. But I think the monetization is going to be complicated because of, although the game sold twice as many as it would have expected to sell previously, 3 times in some cases, how does the monetization, the post-game really work if you're just selling skins? Now, in my mind, my mindset is always that I'm willing to support a game that I'm really enjoying and playing and actively participating in. I'm absolutely willing to spend money on some extra content, and hopefully it doesn't ruin the experience for other people. So this is good. The skins kind of then fund the additional support for the game. However, is this actually going to work better than their previous models where they were basically charging most people? Probably not, but we'll see. We will see. They've sold twice as many copies, so it looks like they were rewarded in that department anyway, so maybe it'll balance out. But hey, and a quick one about Skate, because we already kind of mentioned all there is to really talk about. Skate was the free-to-play model of EA, and clearly, as you can see, they're kind of testing out different models to see what works. And maybe they realized that maybe different models work for every game. But clearly, in Skate's case, this has not worked. Clearly, people wanted a campaign. Clearly, people didn't want just a sandbox where you could just buy clothes and do these stupid challenges that are not really that interesting. They wanted characters, a world, an atmosphere. And none of that exists in Skate. Not to say that it's impossible for them to add, but realistically, when it comes to these games, like free-to-play games, when they're out and then it kind of stagnates pretty quickly, and even if they add these things later, I've not really seen a massive comeback from a free-to-play experience in quite a while now. I think people are just kind of done with that model, at least people that were, well, thinking about Skate, the people that played Skate, the people that say play Need for Speed, they already know the type of game that they want to have. You're kind of playing on nostalgia here. So to kind of completely change the model and try and go like for a Fortnite type model when the game doesn't really have the Fortnite type creating tools or anything, especially, it's just not gone well. So we are finally at the junction, my friends. What does this all mean for Need for Speed? We're going to talk about everything related to Need for Speed based on this, based on history of Need for Speed, and again, some really surprising details I found based on these Battlefield sales figures that we found. So, could they possibly, for Need for Speed and other games and other studios, now give them longer to develop the games? This has always been a pretty huge one. Realistically, what Need for Speed used to be was what F1 used to be. It was the racing franchise that they could sell every year, and then it became every 2 years, and then it was like, this is getting kind of difficult because you keep putting us on a different game. What it seems like is that EA is now willing to give more time, and they've realized the reward is clearly there. If the developers are given the time to breathe, give them the time to hone in on specific aspects that their game kind of needs, their genre kind of needs, surprise, surprise, people actually will flock to your game in the masses. Will they give Need for Speed more time? I think that's a kind of given. I expect them to at least give us another extra year, so like 3 years of development time for a Need for Speed game would be absolutely mind-boggling, especially when we kind of already know what Forza Horizon 6 is going to be. We already kind of know that that game is going to try and play on the Fortnite-ification and the overtop and the craze and giving you everything all the time. They have got a massive window here to go gritty, to go real, to go dark, just like they did with Battlefield. And those people that maybe haven't bought a game in the franchise since 2015, since Need for Speed Heat, or since 2005, Underground 2, will finally go, crap, Need for Speed is getting gritty like it used to be. That's my time to jump in again, and I think that's what Battlefield managed to do. Now, with Need for Speed, will they give us multiple studios, just like they did with Battlefield? No. Is my initial thought there. However, the idea in my head about the idea of them potentially moving some of the Codemasters team to working on a different engine, maybe there's some shareability there with the physics. Whether they use the same engine or not, the bases could still be shared. The expertise could still be shared between the studios. This could be something that a lot of people really focus in on, the fact that the physics are really not something they enjoy with Need for Speed. The difficulty is then finding if those people actually liked the Unbound updated handling model that they added, because a lot of those people probably even try it. So it's one of those where I don't think they'll get a full team, like multiple team. They'll get a full Need for Speed team, but I don't think they'll get multiple teams like Battlefield did. However, I do think there's going to be a more collaborative effort of sharing between the studios, and that could be absolutely huge for Need for Speed. So this is a real quick one, a properly interesting point. We know 2015 hit about 15 million copies. We know Need for Speed Heat hit very, very similar to that, maybe even better. Now, we don't know about Unbound. That information is not as easily trackable, but what we do know is it didn't do as well. But to be fair, that was at the time when PlayStations, you couldn't fucking get one. Who was surprised that the game didn't do very well when you couldn't buy the system that the game was on? But did you know that per average, Battlefield sold less per game than Need for Speed has? And Need for Speed has many more games, which is always kind of bizarre to think about. So we're talking about multiple games that did like 15 million, and Battlefield often struggles to do like 10. And that just kind of blew my mind a little bit, because Need for Speed was coming out every fucking year. Now, this is where I'm real with you. I am someone that likes a single player campaign. I like the story. I like being pulled through the world. It is my favorite aspect of games. I don't really play any dedicated multiplayer games. I play the additional multiplayer on story-based games. It's probably the best way I could describe it. I'm a Ratchet and Clanker. I don't mean it. I'm not AI. I'm not AI. Need for Speed, GTA. I'm trying to get back into Pokemon, but anyway, I like story games for the most part. And Mafia, the old country, is my favorite game. But you get the point. I think the best move for Need for Speed going forward is they've really got to get that multiplayer working and working well. They have failed tremendously on every game other than Unbound at launch, even Unbound at launch. Every single multiplayer experience has been unacceptable. There has been a PvP missing. You couldn't get into races. And of course, once a fall off happens, it's kind of hard to recoup those people. But I'm sure they did very well with those updates, bringing it back to basically what it kind of should have been at launch. At least, you know, when they added the PvP update. The after ones, and that was additional. I get it. Need for Speed Heat, the best game they've released in modern times, didn't have a PvP. What do you mean it didn't have a PvP? And again, that's because they were stretched. It would have been there. I know there was likely a concept for it done already. It just, they didn't have the ability to do so. They didn't have the time. And then, of course, the studio was closed, and the rest is history. Rest in peace, Ghost Games. EA do this so many times. Don't do it again. Just don't. Just stop. You have no studios left. Who's going to make your Battlefield games? We need more racing studios to make Battlefield. Come on. Okay, to put it simply, what they need to do is get a speed list system day one. Day one needs to be there straight away. But what they need to do, and this is the best way to incorporate single player and multiplayer, they've done it before. All Drive needs to return. I'm going to keep saying this. I said this at the start, launch. I don't know why they dropped All Drive. I mean, okay, no, I do know why they dropped All Drive, but I don't think it worked in the way that they intended. If you keep All Drive, you get a single player campaign, you get a world that drags people to do multiplayer activities and therefore play for longer, all in one sphere. The Crew has failed at this aspect for a while now. Since the Crew 1, I haven't really had an interaction like I did in the Crew 1. The drop in, drop out doesn't seem to work properly. Need for Speeds worked because it was basically just a closed session where you ran into people. That was good. What if we do that, but with more people? Bigger sessions. When they do updates for the game, they'll work on both multiplayer and single player. It's one cohesive world that they need to update. Therefore, everything in it gets updated at the same time, making it much easier for you to just keep playing single player. If you want to play offline, you'll be able to play offline. No, I'm not talking always online. I'm talking All Drive, just like it was previously in Need for Speed Heat. You could play offline, you could play it online, but if you played it online, people could run into you. You couldn't really pause, but I almost accepted that drawback. No, I did accept the drawback. It was fun bumping into people. It was fun having the police chases where all of a sudden half the lobby of police could just run after someone else instead. Creating a world that was living while you're playing the single player experience, like in Forza Horizon, works tremendously well, and I can't state this enough. No one has got it right so far, other than Need for Speed, just not on a big enough scale. Simply, I think everyone could be made happy with a PvP door and an All Drive / single player door. You add campaign by adding characters, story, interest that works in both multiplayer and single player. And hell, you can even do big events to the world that basically tie in like a live service style element. If that's the route they go, I feel like it does need it to compete. It's obvious if you look at the industry, FH5 and the Crew Motorfest, both those games found the mass success in their multiplayer elements. I can tell you, it ain't for the campaigns. I mean, the Crew's trying. I want to give them credit there, but it ain't the Forza campaign that's pulling people in. I can tell you that much. Think about maybe the Heat Plus parts, okay? Maybe that was an enjoyable aspect of Heat that you had to work a little bit harder to get those extra parts. And then you could, you know, in the PvP, you could make it so that they're like everything is level balance and stuff. But those parts would be good for like single player events. Or hell, you can have like a hardcore PvP door that basically uses your cars. That would be pretty interesting. What about like drift charms? All these challenges that you can do in Need for Speed games, I don't tend to bother because usually the reward is not that interesting. But if you give me like special drift charms for doing drift challenges, if we went to interior customization and for example, you said, oh, you can get new like shifters if you do the drag events. Oh my God, I'm gonna do that. There's so many ways, so many avenues you could go through. You get to focus on making your master build, which hasn't been a thing. Need for Speed is about customization. I want to build the master build. And what I would like to see, obviously, with that is 2 studios, one working on the updates system, or maybe the same studio, but kind of like have a split off section where there's a team working on the updates, because clearly that tiny team that was working on the updates for Unbound did amazing. Let's have that again, but the whole studio then working on the next game or what's next after, you know, a couple of months or so. So that's a lot of information for you, and I hope you now understand why my brain just bubbles these things away. I am very excited to hopefully see another Need for Speed. Like, let's be real. There's a very big chance with the Saudi stuff, and there's a chance that Need for Speed may be pushed aside for a little bit, but EA has told us it will return, and they're going to retain control. So you would imagine we're going to see a Need for Speed. Clearly, all thoughts were thrown into Battlefield for the short term, but now that's done. That is done, and they're now realizing that more time was good, and the best people for that game were the developers that were dedicated to that game. Surprise, surprise, it worked out quite well for them. So when do I expect them to start on a Need for Speed game? If and when. My hope is next year. The fallout has happened, okay? I keep saying the fallout as if it's a bad thing. The success has happened. We've got to wait for the dust to settle of the big explosion of Battlefield taking over the industry and like being the biggest selling game in 3 years, which is just boggling the mind. We've got to wait for that to happen, and then next year, I'm sure budgets will be assigned, teams will be assigned, plans will be assigned. Their intent was to do annual Battlefield releases, but I think it's now shown that that's probably not the best thing for them to do, because Battlefield was selling like 10 million copies before, and now in 3 months, right, they've sold as many as those 3 games would have combined. Releasing a game is a lot more expensive than just updating the game for a little bit and getting money, and then doing another big release. If this is the way to do it, look, I'm a YouTuber. If I saw my big effort videos were doing better, I'm just gonna do big effort videos. And why do you think Pyrocynical, Pyro Live, or the like sub channels that they do where they post slop, and then they've got big videos, because ultimately those are more rewarding. In YouTube, that's, you know, unfortunately not really fully the case. But anyway, just relatability. Hey, my hope is they start next year. My hope is that they get 2.5, 3 years. This generation has been extended by the delay of GTA. That would surely mean that the next game will release at the end of this generation, which is much better than releasing a game right at the beginning of the generation when no one could buy the console. That was kind of stupid, wasn't it? Yeah, that worked out very well. Or when the new consoles just come out and you get a cross-generation game, because the next generation is going to be messy, as in, like, it's probably not going to be that different. It's going to... The law of diminishing returns is really going to be here. You seen the price of RAM? Bro, it's not going well. Ultimately, what they've figured out is a more focused time in means more reward out. Especially for a genre that, if you look in other directions, is lacking. It's hard to explain the Forza situation, because Forza is at its height. It is at its peak. And it may go further, but as it currently stands, so many people are drained dry by Forza Horizon. They want something different. They are driven insane. And the thing is, these people have played Forza. Look, there's a chance again to do something that you have done here against Call of Duty, but with a racing game. Forza Horizon is the Call of Duty. It's the same publisher now. You have the chance here to hone in and do something amazing. People are looking for gritty, realistic, like angry. They want the over-the-top stuff to chill out a little bit. We want some reality here. I feel like there's a shift happening from like the Fortnite-ification of everything, and people are going like, look, I just want to play this dedicated experience. And a final note, if you're still here, appreciate you. Thank you so much. You know, I love you. A note about this type of content. I love doing it. I love diving in deep into the industry, looking at what's going on, and basically analyzing everything that could potentially be, because it excites me. Like, I'm excited about the future of Need for Speed, at the same time terrified. So anytime there's anything new, I want to share it. But obviously it's now been like 3 months since I really spoke about Need for Speed, and that seems pretty insane. But I have appreciated the time I've had to like kind of digest and really process this information, just like, you know, they have had more time, hopefully, to start working on a new feed soon. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to, like, bombard people with this type of content because I get it. Like, sometimes there's no actual, like, announcement or release or anything. That's going to be an entirely different ballpark. But this is something I enjoy doing, and I hope you enjoy it. And I've been taking time to process information together, like all of these 3 things you saw here, before I just did one for each. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.